Hi there, it's your French teacher Andrei. In today's lesson, we're going to review the plus-que-parfait. What is the plus-que-parfait? The plus-que-parfait is actually the past perfect in English. So, in French, in order to form it, we use the imperfect tense, and be careful to not confuse it with the passé composé, because the passé composé uses the present tense of avoir or être and the past participle, while the plus-que-parfait will use the imperfect tense of avoir or être plus the past participle of the main verb. Now, how do we choose between être and avoir? We've already discussed this in the passé composé lesson, but I'm also going to discuss it right here. We choose it like this. If we are using a movement verb such as rentrer or sortir or aller, partir, anything that signifies a movement from one point to another, then you would use the être. Also, you use être when using reflexive verbs that we've talked about in another lesson. Also, the thing is, there is an exception. We use avoir with verbs that mean movement, like descendre, rentrer, entrer, remonter, monter, retourner, and sortir, these six, when they are followed by a direct object. How do we identify a direct object? The direct object is identified by putting the question que or qui to the main verb, to the verb we are conjugating. So, let's take an example to see that, because often in this time, when we use also a direct object in conjunction with the verb conjugated at past perfect, but also applicable to passé composé, it changes the meaning. So, first sentence is: À quelle heure étais-tu sorti avant que tu sois parti ici? So, at what hour had you left before you came over here, right? So, sorti in this case would mean leave, and we see that is conjugated with être, as it usually should. However, if I say something like this, avais-tu sorti les carottes? Well, les carottes actually answer the question que. Put to avait sorti. Que avais-tu sorti? Les carottes, right? So, what had you taken out? In this case, sortir means to take out something. What have you taken out? You have taken out the carrots from the fridge, etc., etc. Avais-tu sorti les carottes du frigo avant mon arrive? Had you taken out the carrots out of the fridge before my arrival here? So les carottes responds to the what question or who. Usually that's how you identify a direct object. How to use it in negative sentences? Well, in negative sentences, it is basically the same as for passé composé. You put the auxiliary form or auxiliary verb between the negation, the ne and pas, and you obtain something like this. For j'avais rigolé, je n'avais pas rigolé. For j'étais parti, to negate it would mean je n'étais pas parti. For reflexive verb, the reflexive pronoun comes after the first part of the negation. What do I mean by that? For example, if I would conjugate se tromper in this case, je ne m'étais pas trompé. So we see ne, then a reflexive pronoun, then auxiliary verb conjugated at imperfect, then pas, then past participle. So that is the formula for conjugating the plus-que-parfait of reflexive verbs. In this and at the negative form, je ne m'étais pas trompé dans mon calcul. I hadn't been wrong in my calculations. Let's talk also about the agreement of the past participle. Again, I've discussed this in the passé composé lesson, but I'm also going to discuss it over here. For some verbs, the participe passé has to agree in gender and number with either the subject or the object of the sentence. This agreement is necessary in the following situations. First, When a verb takes être as an auxiliary, the participle agrees automatically in gender and number with the subject. So basically, for every verb of movement that you may have, or every reflexive verb, because it is also the same, um, and also the same rules apply to the passé composé, you would have to agree on gender and number. So, for example, if I say something like ils étaient allés dans leur bureau, I would add an s after the past participle of the verb aller in this case. In the case of they and females, referring to females, we would also add an e before the S. So S for masculine plural, ES for feminine plural when using the past participle. For verbs that take avoir in the passé composé, the participle only agrees in the gender and number with the direct object that comes before the verb. So pay attention, because if the direct object is after the verb, then uh, you have no agreement with anything with the subject, right? So for example, if I had something like this, il avait rangé son bureau, or il avait rangé sa chambre, we see that we have no agreement, nothing, no e or s or es after the past participle. However, if I am to replace the son bureau or sa chambre with a direct object pronoun that is going to be placed before the verb, the auxiliary verb over here, you will have something like this: il l'avait rangé, and in this case, it is we don't have an e or an s, because son bureau is masculine singular. So here you actually put nothing. If, however, we have feminine singular, we put an e after that. Right, right. We also see that we can have this, let's say, type of exception when we have a reflexive verb that is conjugated with être, but it is followed by a direct object again. So if a reflexive verb is followed by a direct object, and it is conjugated obviously with être, then you do not have the agreement. For example, elle se lavait les mains, then you do not have a e over here. Normally, you should have it. If you would not have les mains, then you would have elle se lavait, and you would have an e here, right? But because we have a specific direct object after that, we know that it's not that she uh, is not the case for that, right? So we see it over here that if we are having elle s'était lavée, then we'd have the e at the end. Lastly, you have to remember that the past participle never agrees with an indirect object. So, for the past participle of the following verbs, se téléphoner, se parler, se mentir, se plaire, complaire ou déplaire, se sourire, se rire, se nuire, se succéder, se suffire, se rassembler, sans vouloir, which are reflexive verbs in themselves, but do not um, uh, but are not actually, how do I say it? They will be conjugated with être, we know that, but actually the se has the value of an indirect object. And why is that? Because it is used in the sense of each other, not of self. You are not the only one person implicated in this, in the action that is going to be represented by that verb. So se parler would actually mean to have a conversation between two people, right? Right. So it's time for our challenge, and this challenge I thought about it to, I don't know, to motivate you. In case you do well, you may get a grade out of it. So for each sentence that you do correctly, you get 2 points, and that will be a total of 10 points. So we see a verb aller that is going to be conjugated with avoir or être, how do you say, how you have to decide about it. We see recevoir, which is not a movement verb, and it's not reflexive either. We see vouloir, right, which is again not a reflexive or verb of movement. Voir, again, not a reflexive or verb of movement. And descendre, which actually means to go down the stairs, or to go down in general. You can go down by the stairs or by the lift, and so on and so. Anyway, let's see if we have some uh, new things over here. I don't think so. I think la voiture, we know what it means. It means the car. We see nouvelle, which is the feminine version of nouveau, which means new. So that would mean a new car. Recevoir means to receive. I think we know this verb already. Vouloir means to want. Voir means to see. Descendre, I said it already, means to go down. Les escaliers are the stairs. And yeah, we should revise the solution now. So the solution goes a little bit like this. So I know that aller is a verb of movement. So in this case, it's going to be conjugated with être. So, est-ce qu'elle était déjà allée? And in this case, we have to take into consideration that we we are not in the case where we may have a reflexive verb with a direct object after it. So actually, we do not have a direct object after it. So you are saved the trouble, but you know that you have to do the chord with of the past participle. So in this case, we also notice that we have es over here because we have the third plural form and feminine form of the subject pronoun, right? Elle. So in this case, we'd put an es after it. So we say conjugated with être, subject to a chord. The past participle of the verb recevoir is reçu. And because it, as you said, it's not a verb that is going to be a verb of movement. It is conjugated with avoir. So avoir at imperfect for the subject pronoun il, which means actually to obtain the radical form. I know it already, but I'm going to also do this for you again, so you will have the formula inside your head. In order to obtain the imperfect form of any verb, you firstly have to conjugate it at the present in the for the subject pronoun nous. So it would be nous avons. We take out the termination of present, which would be ons, right? So we are left with av, right? With av. So that would be the radical. At the radical, we are going to put the correct termination for the third person plural, in this case, il, which would be ayent. So we obtain ave. Ils avaient. Notice the fact that I pronounced z because we have an S followed by a vowel in the next word. So this is going to be pronounced z. Ils avaient reçu, because we need to use the past participle. We know that the past plus-que-parfait is obtained by avoir or être at imperfect and the past participle. So therefore we have ils avaient reçu an email, and we do not have any accord because it's a verb conjugated in avoir that has no direct object before it. Remember that we have something like this. If you have a direct object after a reflexive verb, then you do not do the accord. If you have a direct object before a verb conjugated with avoir, then you do the accord. If you have a verb conjugated otherwise with être, and you do not have COD after it, and it is not in the reflexive verbs that actually mean that the action is done for each other. Then you do the accord. Let's talk through some the other examples as well. Marc avait voulu une nouvelle voiture. Now the thing is, we don't have we have a direct object after. We do not have it before. So if we had something like Marc l'avait voulu, then we should have an E after the U. And let me actually go to the slide and actually point this out because it is important to know how these rules apply. L'avait, l'avait voulu. And notice the fact that in this case we would have had the E because the direct object would have been placed before the verb in itself, even though this is a static verb and it is conjugated with avoir, right? Right. Next we have Est-ce que tu avais déjà vu ce film? We know that it is a static verb. Voir, to see, is a static verb. It does not mean any movement. The COD is after ce film. Qu'est-ce que j'avais déjà vu? Ce film. And so we do not have any accord, but if we would have had the direct object pronoun before, like this, then we would have had an accord. Est-ce que tu l'avais déjà vu? And the accord would be the same. I mean, basically, you'd have nothing because le film is masculine singular, right? Right. And lastly, we have Juliette était descendue. We have the verb descendre that actually, in this case, is conjugated with être because it means to go down. It means basically a movement. And we know that we know from the first slide that usually this is conjugated with être, but if you would have had some COD after, right, like we have over here, you would conjugate it with avoir. So in this case, we do not have a COD after, so it is subject to accord and it is conjugated with être. So Juliette était descendue par les escaliers. That was it for today's lesson, and I hope that I'll see you in the next one. For now, bye bye, and tell me in the comments if you like this way of teaching, if you like my lesson, if you have any questions, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, of course. For now, bye bye.